Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Brothers and sisters, sorry for the first episode. I was disconnected in my studio. The enemy, again, doing what they do best, trying to stop my feed. So this is part two to the series so please forgive me for the interruption the first time around. I'll go back to where I was at, and I'll get into the part. I want to show something, brothers and sisters. I'm going to get a little bit to the notes, and then I'm going to show you some pictures to get a better understanding. I left you in the first episode with the actor category, talking about what happens and so forth and so on. And this, you go over at your leisure again. I give you understanding what they look at Abuja in particular, because northern Nigeria is a jihad state. As I talked about in my first program, those who missed the first program will see this. And I'm starting with the notes here of where I left off on my first broadcast, talking about the issue of Nigeria. Northern Nigeria is a jihad state. As you see here, I left giving you what these actors and what they think and what they think about Abuja and so forth and so on, and basically what they think about the secular governments of West Africa and whatnot. And again, to refresh your memory, those who did not see the first, I give you a breakdown why sometimes the simplicity of something makes it very clear. Here you got simplicity showing you that this region we know as the Sahel is a jihad region since the 600s, which my notes I will get into that a little bit more. It's a jihad region, brothers and sisters, and this jihad region encompasses is bigger than the United States, and this is what the problem. And the green is a secular region. The green has always, after the colonial period, been inactive to stop the rise of Islam, trying to stop any of the Islamic models, because the one in the green all are under some foreign actor, Americans, British, French, and they pay them millions and millions of dollars every year in order to subjugate the Muslims in the north. This is why you have this jihad, and why northern Nigeria in itself is a jihad state. So you have that indication there, brothers and sisters. And let me get back to some of my notes here, and then I'm going to show you some pictures to give you a better understanding. How do we get to the point of why I call it the region a jihad region, and the northern Nigeria is a jihad state? As you see here, the divine order and the secular decay. The secular West African governments, in a sense, it's very bad. We know the governance is very bad across Africa, period. But across the world, the governments are very bad to this day. So we see this root of the cause of the great separation between the Sahel and the coastal West Africa. It's always been this way. The Great Divide separating to its profound moral and structural fracture. When one examines the landscape of the coastal and region, the symptoms are stark, pervasive lawlessness, institutional debauchery. We see all of this. When you have Muslims in the north, and you look at this in northern Nigeria, they go down to Abuja, they see all kinds of things. They see prostitution. They see many different things that I'm not trying to say the north is perfect. That's not what I mean. But you have a lot of things that they don't see in the north. You see homosexuality, you see different things, prostitution houses, you see a lot of drug use, you see many things going on in the south that you don't necessarily have in the north. To attribute these symptomatic pathogens is the implementation of Sharia law. As secular critics and Western state apparatuses routinely attempt to do, is to deliberately distort reality. They'll tell you that the Sharia is no good. If it was no good, the West will allow you to do it because they know it will fail. The reason why they stop you is because they know the Sharia is working. because we've had many centuries of using the Sharia. Since the Sharia was instituted in the 700s, it's been active in Sahel, in the jihad region, since the 700s. And it's been effective. See? So that's why they don't want to see it done. That's why they pay the secular Western coastal governments millions to fight this, to make sure it doesn't come back again. The secular government's chaos, moral decay, you see here. You know the story about that. You know what's going on with the governments around the world, period. The integrity of divine law, the structure. Here's where it gets interesting. Here we talk about across the secular dominated zones, the stark contrast to order, justice, community prescribed by the laws of the Creator. The Sharia law is the exact opposite of what the laws that are purported and trying to shove down the throat of the Muslims in the north. The crisis suffocating the region has nothing to do with adherence to Sharia law. The Americans, the British, and they'll tell you that all the problems is going on is because of Sharia law. That's not true, brothers and sisters. The problems is not having nothing to do with the Sharia, because the Sharia is being blocked. The problems are doing with democratic ways and means. This is where the problem is. Under democratic ways and means, debauchery is allowed. Drug trafficking is out of whack. You have unwanted pregnancies. You have stealing, robbing. You have cattle wrestling. You have all kinds of things. Ethnic strife. All this is under the watch of the democratic ways and means, not under the Sharia law. You cannot bomb. You cannot destroy this, because the jihad is originated in the 1600s. Now we get to it. Why? How did this region become a jihad region? It started back in the 700s, in the 8th centuries, in the middle Senegal Valley. We call it the Takrur Sultanate. And let me show you a map of this, brothers and sisters. This is the genesis of the jihad. The genesis, how this jihad started that time and is carried on from one family to another. Each generation adopts the jihad model, and it continues on. This is why the North is in its state as it is. And I show you how this here you have the Western corridor. Takrur was built by the Fulani, about the Tuareg, the Soninke, the Wolof, the Sire, and others built this region called Takrur, which was on the outskirts of the old Ghana Empire. It developed there, and we're not sure if the Fulani and the Tuareg brought it from the north to down south from Morocco, because there's no Mauritania in those days. It was just Morocco. Morocco Aqsa is what we call this in Arabic. And they brought it to the north, to the south, or did they come from the east, the northeast, and then north central, and then into region of Senegal, as we know today, Northern Senegal, and then developed Takrur. This is where it began, brothers and sisters. The Fulani took a jihad, and along with their Tuareg brothers, and they opened up Takrur. This is the first of the jihad, the active offensive jihad, brothers and sisters. This developed in around about the 600s, but they did not become an active jihad or an emirate until the 700s, when they went up to Andalus. You know the story. I told you about that before in many of my telecasts and my broadcasts talking about that. And we got this. We again showing you the nexus of what has happened and whatnot. This the jihad, brothers and sisters, is so massive that it shows you the map is going. It comes up to the north, comes back down to the south. It goes left and right, and these are also the trade routes and whatnot, and how the jihad, as what has happened, is opened up all this region. Under the jihad, they open up. Banditry was defeated. You still have some bandits here and there, but trade was allowed. Gold from the south going, salt from the north was going down to the south. All this, and anybody who was not a Muslim who came to subjugate them, there was an active jihad called, and there were a fight, and we had that happen. to the point to where at the beginning, the Ghana Empire negotiated with Ghana, and then in time, the Takrur, along with what we call the Murabitun, finally began to defeat the Ghana Empire, and that's another story and another history lesson in itself. So that kind of gives you some backdrop. And then we'll look, I'll give you something so you can kind of understand the families of Takrur and in the history. The kingdom of Takrur, many Fulani don't even know this history. Many, even in the ulama, don't even know this history. This is why I'm saying we should not be ashamed of our history. We should not be ashamed of who we are, because this is who we are. This is our region. Okay, and we believe in Islam, and we worship Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. We believe in our Nabi alayhi salam, and we follow his Sunnah. So the kingdom Takrur was no joke, brothers and sisters. You had some of the roughest ethnic groups all came together under the Islamic banner. This is one of the first. You had Tuareg, you had the Fulani, you had the Soninke, you had the Wolof, you had the Jollof, you had the what they call Bambara, you had the Siri, you had all these ethnic groups, and later the Arabs began to come, but they weren't the catalyst, because the Arabs did not arrive in this region for a long time. But this kingdom developed, brothers and sisters, and they were quiet in many regards. Ghana had a treaty with them, and they let them flourish. And the kingdom of Takrur began to move northward again. We think they came from the south. The Fulani came from the south along with their Tuareg brothers, and they developed Takrur. They developed it. Then, as more and more Fulani began to come to Islam, and more Tuareg began to hear about Takrur, and others converts to Islam, they began to settle in the kingdom of Takrur. It became very powerful. 300 years later, again, brothers and sisters, it developed into a full-fledged sultanate, and that's another story in itself. Where you heard me talk about the Murabitun came to for safety in Takrur, and that again is another a story that I talked about many times. And so we look at some of the families. The Takrur region, you have a lot of families, the Fulani families. They're similar to this here. As you can see, this is some of the families who settled in the Takrur region and whatnot, and so forth and so on. And they differ in many regards to our Fulani brothers we understand today. They're not necessarily dealing with cattle anymore. Now they're in the Sahara Desert or on the outskirts of the Sahara, and they live in the Sahara Desert, and they have their camels and so forth. But they developed a irrigation system everywhere they moved in the Sahara Desert. This is what is interesting about the Fulani, how industrious they are, and so forth and so on. Here is just a picture of a family, a Takrur family, and so forth. And I just wanted to give you some of these indications of how they look. And this is the modern family, like a Takrur family. Again, this is the modern Takrur family, meaning you'll find them now anywhere from the northern Senegal all the way up into Morocco. Here is more like southern Morocco, Mauritania, but they are descendant of the Takrur region. In their bloodline, you will find Tuareg in their bloodline. In their bloodline, you'll find Arab. You'll find also Soninke in their bloodline. They're not full-fledged all Fulani, but they still speak the Fulani dialect, but some speak only Arabic now, so they have changed and so forth. But this is a family that's basically a descendant of the Takrur region, and so forth and so on. And I want you to see some of this. This is a beautiful Takrur family here, beautiful Fulani sister, and our brother here, and his sons and his daughter. And this is, again, a depiction to help you to get the understanding of this Takrur and how this jihad initiated. And we'll cover this part of it here when we get to the notes here. We covered that in the first chapter. The Takrur, as you heard me talk about that, the ancient roots of the Sahelian governance. This is the governance we need to go back to, even in modern times today, brothers and sisters. This will stop this banditry. It'll stop all this marauding. It will bring the farmer and the herder together because we develop a system that both benefited from this. Okay, both benefit from this. It will stop the marauders. It will stop the security forces from marauding and being predators going up against the Fulani families, taking our women and ravishing them and taking our cattle. It'll put an end to this. Okay, it'll put an end to this. And this is why I've been pushing this. So you see the Takrur paradigm and so forth. And this will give you the history, how the jihad began and why we're instilling the jihad today. The original blueprint, multi-ethnic coalition, as you heard me talk, long before there was Sokoto, long before you talk about almost nearly close to 1,000 years before Sokoto, the Takrur had already passed on his time, and it weathered into history. And the Takrur demonstrated many different attributes. You see me here talking about the Fulani, Tuareg, Soninke, and so forth and so on. The Fulani vanguard, the early history established that the Fulani and their allied populations paved the way to develop this first jihad, and then he settled in Takrur, and that's where we got it. Now we talk about more Islamic. Tasdeed. Tasdeed in the Arabic language actually talks about the renewal. Renewal meaning jihad. You get weak and suddenly a reformer comes, like you see like in northern Nigeria when Usman Dan Fodio, he was a reformer. When he came, he's what they call mujahid, but the act is called tasdeed, where it's the renewal of the jihad and renewal of the Sharia law. We have this, and even Subhanahu wa Ta'ala talks about this renewal every 100 years in the Quran. So we'll have our sultan gets weak, then suddenly a reset comes. Somebody comes to bring back the original of Sharia law through jihad and so forth, and correcting rogue governance. Rogue governance will try to suppress the Muslims like we have today. Abuja is secular. There's secular law. They send their troops up to the north. They send their security forces to the north. They even send the Tuareg to the north to suppress the Fulani in particular. And then, but the jihad is designed to correct rogue governance. See, but this is again hypothetical way it should be. Here we're not talking about every Muslim should be gathering arms, because we have to be careful in doing that. We know our brothers what they're doing, and we understand what they're doing. None of us can ask a man who's had his livelihood taken, his land taken, his wife and children killed, and his cattle taken, and we tell him he just sit there. I'm not going to tell him that. If he decides to join a Mujahideen group to exact revenge, that's between him and Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Okay? Because, and the Subhanahu wa Ta'ala will examine, and the angels will examine his niyyah, his intention. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh, you know what the Americans told us to do? You just sit there and don't do nothing. No, I'm not going to tell him that. Because if I was in that situation, I think in myself, I would pick up my arms, go fight. Why? Because they just took my family. They just took my livelihood from me. They took my children from me. Okay? And I'm a man. I don't think I'm going to sit there now. I'm going to be realistic, of course. But again, I'm not in that situation, but I can never tell a brother what to do. Since there's no legal recourse, he can't go to the police because it's the police who's doing it. See? The expanding on the Sahelian covenant. This is a very interesting thing. The Sahel is a different breed, as the Russians will tell you, and so forth. This is a different animal. The binding nature of the covenant. Covenant implies a solemn pact where temporary arrangements in the Sahel, the relationship between the people and the leadership and the governance is forged through centuries of shared religious law, moral accountability, and resistance to external tyranny. Why you have the jihad? Just what we talk here, the secular is the exact opposite of that. They want you not to look at your religious law. They don't want you to look at the moral accountability. They want you to accept homosexuality. They want you to accept debauchery and whoredom. They want you to accept drug use and so forth, and freedom of expression, and so forth. A woman decides she wants to walk out of the house naked, she can't. This is where we have the separation between us. We don't like that. The duty of the tasjid, renewal. Within this covenant, when governing body, whether traditional sultanate or modern secular, breaks its moral mandate, attempts to suppress the laws of the creator, which we have today, the view of the, there's things will happen, and we know what would happen. A renewal, a jihad. We see this in Northern Nigeria today. Northern Nigeria is a jihad state. We see this happening. Now, we get our ulama to orchestrate a Council of 40. And so from this is my hope and my prayers that it will happen. When the secular state attempts to sanitize or misinterpret this history, it misses the core mechanisms of the tradition, which they have done today, brothers and sisters. They have the mechanism of tradition has been, they have perverted it, and this is the problem we have. And the coastal figure, what they'll do is they don't care about the history. They want it to be secular, and they want to get paid doing it. This is the essence, brothers and sisters. The secular state wants to fight the Muslims, and they want the Americans to pay them, which they're doing, or the British. They pay them. So that means the cronies and people in government get money for this. See? And then here we got more notes here. And then the central governments often seek traditional councils, hoping they can be passive. We have today the ulama, and I'm not going to criticize them to a degree because we don't know each of their status. Because of the secular apparatus and the American apparatus in particular, they have suppressed the ulama. Just like over here in Morocco, they go after students are not just like me. They'll send thugs. You know the story I've told you many times. They clean out the masjid. They threw out all the brothers in the masjid. Now it's full of thugs and khawarij and so forth and so on. They add bid'ah to the masjid. The Salibi, he's inside. The Crusader, he's in there. The white guy, the Tubab, he's acting as a Muslim when he's not a Muslim. So this is the type of thing that you have. The secular governments will introduce the disbelievers, the Tubab, into our regions to propose as Muslims. They in turn will hire local miscreants to fight against Islam as well. We see that, and this is what is happening, especially in North Africa in particular. The sovereign mandate, by making it clear that armed resistance is, Abuja has to understand, which they do understand, but they don't want to grasp it. You're going to have armed resistance because why? The region has been in active armed jihad since the 600s when it took Takrur, and it's never stopped. So if you're going to go after the Muslims in the north, you're going to have an armed resistance. This is what we're talking about here, getting them to understand that. Rejecting secular subversion. They don't understand in the South why we won't accept their religious beliefs, why we don't accept their paradigm, which is mixed with African tradition, mixed with European tradition, and so forth. We won't accept that. But they're trying to drive it down our throat. And that's the problem. That captures the heartbeat of the entire paradigm, framing northern Nigeria and the wider Sahel through the lenses of continuous orientation through renewal. We have weak Islamic states, and then a renewal comes. Those states become weak, a new reformer or new groups come to reform again, and the jihad is reactivated, revigorated again. This is what we talk about, and that's why the Sahel is a jihad region, and northern Nigeria is a jihad state. No doubt about that. When external forces, secular states attempt to permanently freeze, suppress the indigenous orientation, this is a key. Orientation through brutal military force. As we see today, they are fighting against an active historical current. They know that. They want to change that. They want to stop Islamic law. Yes, they may legislate, they may have it, but they want to stop it. They don't let you fully implement all of it, only some parts of it. The constant ebb and flows of resistant, reform, structural challenge is why the region is in the turmoil. As the North begins to revolve, the South gets stronger, they get more money, and they send troops. Now there's a battle. Then suddenly the South weakens, and then the North gets stronger again to resist them. This battle's been going on back and forth now for a long time, and this is why we have the problem. Educating Abuja through deep history. We have to press, we need the council for it to develop so they can go to Abuja to bring a new type of system where we can save lives, okay? And also curtail the security problems that we have in the North, meaning a lot of the security problems are actually done by the government itself. Their government forces are actively involved in many of the criminal activity as we talked about, see? So this is something that we have to look at, and we have to, excuse me here, okay, excuse me. Getting close to prayer, and I'll be closing here very shortly. So the fugitive suppression, they keep figuring that they can suppress the jihad in the North, and they just can't do it. The legacy of Takrur is in the hearts of all the Fulani. That's our legacy. That's our legacy. That's our ancestral fathers. The council, if it's adopted, provides Abuja with the ultimate historical context. They tell Abuja, look, you're not going to stamp out Islam. You're not going to do it. We should partner, and you should let us govern autonomously in the North. Allow us to have full 100% Sharia. Let us have our own security forces. This has to be done. The peace in the Sahel cannot be imposed by secular force and foreign proxy. Abuja figures they get money. They said they invite the Americans to come to fight in the North, and it's not going to work. It makes the North even more angry, and the increase of the Mujahideen and the magnet groups and the militias grow because of the secular force and foreign proxies. And so so you see this, and we have this segment of part two of the Northern Jihad. Northern Nigeria is a jihad state, and I'll be closing on part two here very shortly. The translating history into a strategic, literacy. We have to educate Abuja to tell the media to stop calling the Fulani criminals. They must stop using the terms that the Tubab Europeans use to describe the people in the North. They must stop this. And they have to use something different than what has been told to them. We have a dossier that the council will give to Abuja to delineate what is actually a bandit, who is Mujahideen, who is a marauding, Muharaba, and so forth and so on. So that way we have a better understanding, not classify all Fulani people as criminals and terrorists. That's got to stop. And then they have to understand the legacy of all of this jihad in this region, brothers and sisters. They must understand this legacy in order for us to move forward. Abuja does not understand this. They keep using force. They go after the scholars in the North. We have scholars who are scared to talk. They cannot. Or you have scholars, they're only grounded. They'll stay in their homes, or they'll go to the masjid and they'll talk about small issues, or they'll talk about the Quran, they'll talk about the Sunnah, and that's it. They do not solve the problems. We have banditry. Some have tried. Sheikh Gumi, there's others who've tried to go at them. But we have problems as far as the ulama in the North in particular. Because they are weak, we have a vacuum. And when people need answers, they can't get answers from the ulama because they themselves are being suppressed. And this is all by design. That's why this active jihad, brothers and sisters, makes it to the point where we have this. And since they remove the righteous scholars out of the equation, you have people took over. And this is what we have here. And this is the problem that we have. And this jihad is going to continue. Over to your left, it started in, again, 600s in the Senegal Valley region, and it's carried on to the Eastern Corridor, which is in Nigeria. And Nigeria is a historical jihad state. These things have to be understood as the coastal West Africa, they understand in a way, but there's too much money to be made. The West African states make millions and millions a year from the Americans, from loans from Europe to go fight in the jihad zone. Everybody gets paid. It's a illegal, a horrible, horrendous, immoral financial system. The coastal West Africans talk against the Fulani, saying the Fulani are terrorists. The Americans send 35 million. The government takes that 35 million. Most of it gets pocketed. Most of it gets funneled to offshore accounts, millions of dollars. So that way, when they decide to retire or if they have to leave, they have money. They can go and they can live in comfort in Europe somewhere or in America or whatever situation, or in the Caribbean or in Asia. This is what they do. See, it's a money-making adventure. Then you go to the media adds to this. So this is, now you understand this horrible trend that we have, and we have to understand that the Sahel is a jihad region. It's a jihad region, and northern Nigeria is a historical jihad state. That's got to be understood. And at the bottom is the coastal, which is secular. Now you understand why we divide, why we have the, as we have now understood what I've said and the first broadcast here talking about northern Nigeria as a jihad state. Now you see this not. And brothers, please continue this station. I'm not going to sugarcoat a situation for you. I'll give you exactly the way I see it through analysis and history and so forth and so on, and give you what my thoughts on what we should be doing, because I'm an outsider, meaning because I live in the north. I live in Morocco. This Morocco. That's where I live for 20 years now. I live there, but I can look from the outside, and